Hi, everybody. Thank you again for being here with us. My name is Julieth Fajardo, and this is UX and Tame. And I'm pretty excited. I know I say the same every single time, but I'm so excited about today's topic because when I changed careers and I went into UX, I didn't know what to do so many times. So for me, having someone that can kind of show you the way and show you the inside out of interviews is a big winning. So why don't we bring Billy inside and he tell us about who he is and what he has done. So hey, how are you? Nice to have you here.
Julia, thanks for having me on this. This is exciting, and I haven't done a live podcast, so this is something new.
What? I love it. I love it when I'm the first in so many of these things. I know that at the beginning when we talked, it was supposed to be a podcast and it was being going to be recorded, but I think live stream has been really useful. And for all the people that are watching us, make sure that you put your questions on the comments. I will be bringing those when best fit, pretty much. But okay, why don't we start telling people who you are? Yeah, tell us about you.
Yeah, well, obviously, my name is Billy, and I have been a UX lead at Later for the last 5 years. So it was a long time. I see from the company go from 20 to now we're 200. So it was exciting time. So I have some experience, working in a small team and a large team. And before that, I was in the e-commerce space. So when I switched, it was quite interesting because it is UX, but they are drastically different. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity able to get my hand in doing some product related UX. So yeah, that's a short summary about myself.
Nice, thank you. And again, one of my favorite questions because there's always something interesting and different from each of my guests. So, what is something fun, interesting, or unique to you?
I am a man with many random hobbies. So I like to collect, 1/6 scale toys. As you can see in some of the background, this entire wall is toys. So that's that. And I also like coffee. So I have my own espresso station. I
Oh,
really got into it. And I guess it's the right time because I had my setup done before COVID. So when COVID started, it's like perfect for me to, I guess I don't want to say perfected my coffee skill, but I got pretty good.
yeah.
So yeah,
Like, is this going for sale at one point so people can access to your coffee or not?
I have been requested to open, those, not like a food truck, but like a coffee truck kind of
Yeah,
thing.
nice.
And I think that may be something I might explore when I retire because I think when you retire, you just really need to make sure you do something that you like, and you don't want to sit around home do nothing, right? And coffee is great. You can have a good
Mhm.
conversation about anything, and I get really into coffee. I like to explain, like what's the notes of the coffee, how I make it, all that stuff. But this is for another time.
Yeah, totally. I always feel jealous when people talk about coffee. I'm Colombian and it's like I feel like I should know all of these things, but no. But anyway, why don't we tell people how did you ended up as a UX designer? Like what brought you to this field?
Yeah, I mean, like all designers, none of our paths are linear. So before I, work in this industry, I came from a completely different background. So my first degree is actually human kinetics. So what that is I like sport. So I got into it thinking like, hey, I want to do sport conditioning, right? That makes sense to me. And I did that. And in Canada, that sport conditioning career is not that great comparing to the state because we don't have a lot of professional teams. Even at the college level, we just don't have that kind of infrastructure. So I end up working in specialty footwear store that help people with lower biomechanic problem. So it kind of worked out because I still able to use what I learned. So it was great. I worked there for a few years. And then, at that point, I was, still young. I'm old now, but at that point in time, I'm young. So I thought, okay, I need to do something more because I just can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And, the coworker is great, the job is fun, but I just want to do more. So that's kind of when I start to look at, okay, what should I do in the my second career, or like what options do I have? And as I start looking into it, I decided to do some part-time courses first, just because my brain hasn't been in school setting for a while, so I want to make sure it rotate properly before I get back into it. And yeah, so I come across some marketing courses. I thought like, okay, that might be interesting, and I took a few, and then I understand like, hey, there's some interesting part about not selling things, but like explaining product to customers so they can understand. So that's kind of give me an idea. Okay, I want to do that, but it's still kind of vague, right? Because marketing is so broad. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit and I'll do some research. It's like, oh, design makes sense because you get to make marketing material. So that's like my really uh, basic thinking at that time. Like, okay, I learned something, so I can produce stuff. Then I should be okay looking for a job. So that's why I get back into school. I went to SFU for my second degree, studying design, and I was very lucky. I able to get a co-op and work at Alcatel-Lucent. So now they're Nokia because Nokia acquired them a few years ago. Super corporate, but I'm really thankful for that experience because I'm able to really learn how design work in a business setting. And I think that's really important. And my manager was great. She gave me a lot of tips. And yeah, and then after I graduated, I got my first contract work. And like I said, I'm very lucky. I'm able to find job like one after another. So my first job is at after the contract is at Clearly Contact, and I was underqualified for sure, and I have no idea why they hired me. But hey, the CMO took a chance on me, and I kind of took it, and it worked out. And then like I said, I worked in e-commerce for the next few years, and then afterward, I worked at later for the past 5 years.
And I feel like this is so interesting again for you to go from one career and realize that you want to do something different. Because I feel like a lot of people now in design are coming from that background from different places, and I feel like that's so interesting how to again take those skills and bring it over to design. But I want to know a little bit more about what you're doing now, and as I told you, this is a question to that want to tell people what you're doing, because when I was thinking about how to land that first job and what kind of questions I will get, or how will be the first 3 months, or how will be my job as a designer, it's nice to hear from someone with different experiences and different spaces. So yeah, what do you do right now?
Yeah, I mean, I during my time, like for the past 5 years, I never feel like my job is exactly the same because we later grow so much, right? When I first joined a company 5 years ago, it's only 20 people. So in a room, you see everyone, you know who these people are, you know exactly what they do, and you talk to them. So working in that style is very different than now where we're full remote, 200 people, and there are some people I just don't even know they exist, right? That's just the reality. So speaking, I guess, the small team, because I'm sure there's a lot of people want to know small versus big, right? So I think it's good to talk about both sides. Small team, the advantage is you really get to work on everything, right? So the job description, sure, but it's never exactly the same in a good way, because if you want to get stuff done, you sometimes like, what, this responsibility is kind of like a gray area. It's up to you whether you want to do it or not, right? No one's going to point a gun at your head. It's like, hey, you got to do it. But if you want to do it right, you just kind of, what, I'm just going to do it. And that's kind of my mindset. And that's what, I guess, allow me to learn how to talk to PM. because that's one thing I didn't know. I'm pretty sure I don't know how to do it if I don't actually take that responsibility on. So that allow me, like a designer, understand a business context, like why you're doing this, like how your design actually solve a business problem. And then as we, later expand the product team, to me, I feel like I'm just giving responsibility away. So I'm like, oh, great, I don't have to do this anymore. We actually have people who know what they're doing to take that on. So in the past, like 5 years, really just allow me to focus on more like laser focus on the UX work, but also because we're growing, it gave me the opportunity to learn how to build out a team. And it's really important because I'm a big sport guy, so I always use sport analogy. People at work always make fun of me, but I think it's really important because at the end of the day, if you want to do great things, you have to have a shared vision. People has to be on the same page if they're moving the right direction. So, and in order to do it, you got to make sure people understand the why. You want to make sure people can get behind the reason we're doing things. And in order to do it, you have to build that relationship. So when we hire, we're very careful how we hire people. We actually look at, from a cultural perspective and also skill. They equally important. And when we start, we actually are very slow when it expand our UX team because we value how important that is. So we really pass on a lot of good candidates in the beginning, but we want to hire great ones. So that's kind of how our mindset work. And fast forward now, what my day to day really is, because later it got so big, the app got a lot more complicated. We have different teams to focus on different area of the app. So I'm on like one of teams, and that later we like to name the teams like based on the local mountains. So I'm on the Whistler team. So what we focus on in the scheduling part of it. So we all so my sole responsibility is just to look at that part of the app. And other UX designer will focus on other areas. So we have another designer focused on LinkedIn bio, which is another big part of later. So this is kind of how we distribute work. And, as a lead, I also have office hour where I'll look at other people work if they need feedback. And, I also do mentor internally too, not just externally. Otherwise it'll be unfair because I got paid. And yeah, that's kind of, without getting in too much detail, that's kind of what I do like a day to day.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, and I think that brought us again to what we came for. Yes, today live event is okay. So I'm a new designer and I'm ready to start looking for a job. What do I need to do to uh, the interviewing part? Because at the end of the day, and something that you mentioned, yes, like you want to see if this person uh, can make part of the team, and but what should I work on for my interview skills?
It's hard to answer that question because it really depends on your experience and your skill set, right? So if you are just recently finished your boot camp, then you got a lot more work to do. But if you are, you already done your boot camp and you kind of have like a couple contract work under your experience, that's different because now you have actual work experience. So they put you in a better position. But let's just say, I think it would benefit people who are just starting, right? Like, you just finish your boot camp or whatever that may be. You don't have real work experience. So what I would say is that when you apply for a job, you really have to read the job description because they are there not for fun. They are there because the employer want to tell you what we are looking for. And I would say sometimes people overlook the job description. They would just scan it because like, yeah, I kind of know what we are looking for and I got it. But you kind of miss out some of the details, and those details matter, right? Because I have people apply for the UX position that later, and obviously every company is different. So I'm just speaking from my experience and within later context. Like we at later UX designer are just doing UX work. We're not asking you to do like branding. We're not asking you to do icon. And I have applicants show me their beautiful icon set, and then my mom's like, great. don't care. So that is one of those things why I want to ask people, like when I'm like mentoring on ADP, make sure you read the job description. If you read it once, great, read it again. And then you know what? Read it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, because just make sure you don't miss the key details. I think that is the most important thing. Because once you understand what the employer is looking for, it also helps you to decide, should you apply? Is it something that you want to do, right? Because looking for a job is a two-way street. It's not like, oh, I want a job, I'll do whatever it takes. I get it, especially when you start, because you want the first opportunity. But you also have control to how you begin your career. And I always like to say, looking for a job is like online dating, right? You want to present yourself at your best ability, but you don't want to try too hard. When you try too hard, you feel like you're desperate. And you know what? That kind of turns people off when you're desperate. So you're going to have to find that balance. You want to be determined. You want to show you're excited, but again, don't try too hard.
And I think, okay, we have one question, and I think we can throw it here right away. Is a college degree necessary for this field?
It depends on the company. At later, we don't care. But with that being said, if let's just say we come down to two candidates, they're exactly the same, right? Then we're gonna have to find a way to figure out which one to pick, and that may be, tip the scale, because if everything's the same, then we're gonna have to look down the list to see who is the best candidate in that case.
Okay, and this throws us to our next question, and I think is one of the things, at least for me, that it was the most relevant when looking for a job, and it was, how can I demonstrate my past experience? Because at the end of the day, it's not that you can just see my UX experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't see anything of me as Juliet. Yes, but then when I start bringing, for me, it was retail management. I have 10 years of experience. So how do people highlight, and how important is to highlight this experience in interviews?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think you can't try to map it directly kind of to your point, right? Because if you haven't done any real UX work, you just can't say that, because it's a lie, or you're overstretching it. So you don't want to go down that path. But whatever you've done in the past, there's always something transferable. So using your past experience, like, because you have been in retail, I have worked in retail too. I always tell people retail is one of the most important experience for anyone. It's just not in design. If you want to be working with people in general, I strongly recommend go work retail, because you're going to acquire so many new skills to know how to talk to people, right? How to resolve conflict, because in retail, you don't want to escalate. You always want to de-escalate. And same thing at work, right? Like if you are facing a challenging design problem, guess what? You don't want to light the fire with gas, you just make it even worse. You want to, okay, you know what? Let's look at the facts. Let's look at how we can do it as a team. So when look at a job description, they always kind of say, oh, good communication skill, blah, 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 blah. Then use your retail experience to really say that, like, hey, at a time when, customer come in, blah, 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 this is how I would approach it. It is not the exact same thing. It's a different context, but the approach would be the same. So that is transferable to me. And for example, if you're in a boot camp, yes, your work is not real, but there's a lot of things that's also transferable. Like I always tell people, don't feel ashamed. Feel like, oh, this is not a real project, I don't want to talk about it. Well, if you don't talk about it, I won't even know. And that means, to me, you never done it. So you will never even have that conversation. So just talk about what you have done in an honest manner, right? So if you work in a team, okay, tell me, what is the experience? I'm sure you guys are going to have different opinion. So how do you come to agreement? How do you get alignment? You know what? That is exactly the same at real work. So you're going to tell me how you approach it, so I get an idea if you were on the team, right? So that is something going to help me decide during the interview. And finally, critical thinking. You don't need job experience. Critical thinking is one of the most essential skill set nowadays, especially as we all know on the internet, people just say crazy things. And if you don't stop, breathe, and think, it's not going to turn out well. And in terms of design, exactly the same thing, right? So if you were given a brief to do something, maybe, you know what? Maybe pause and ask why. Because just because I tell you to do it, it doesn't mean it's going to be like the solution, or it's like, oh yeah, this is the way, right? It's not. So for student project, if you're giving a brief, hey, have you even considered the brief makes sense? If the brief asks you like, oh, build a landing page to get more email sign up. Well, the task is not hard, but you should ask like, hey, is that the best way to get more email sign up? Is there any other way to do it? So that to me, even though it's not a real project, you're demonstrating your critical thinking. Then I kind of know like, you know what, you have the skill set to be in this team, right? Obviously, you know, when you start, I'm not looking for like someone with 10 years experience. Like we know what we're looking for. So if you just started, we're looking for junior, it's anything 1 to 3. Like we are very flexible when it comes to that, because we understand some people take a while to get there. That's okay. And some people just like take a little bit less time. So yeah, I think that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and I think this again, and I think this is not a question that they have, but it's like a common feeling uh, for all the junior designers. There is like finding a junior job is difficult, and then you throw there like, oh, here later we look at people between 1 to 3 years, yes, and then you go and see the description is like, oh, I'm not talking about later, but any other description is like, oh, we need people with at least 3 years of experience. How, I know we don't have this question there, but how do you close this gap? Like, how do you make it, again, how do you make it happen? How we close this gap of 3 years of experience?
We can't we don't have a time machine, so we can't really do anything about time. So if the company say like, you know what, if you don't have 3 years experience, and then we won't even look, you know what, that's that, right? That's the end of the conversation. But in my experience, a lot of time when you look at a posting, a job description, all those stuff are flexible. So let's just say the job description are like 10 bullet point. You hit 9 out of 10, and the only one is you don't have 3 year experience. It would be foolish for the employer just to like, you know what, you don't have 3 years, you're out. And if that's how they operate, you probably don't want to work with them either. So like I said earlier, right? I understand it is, especially in this kind of economy, is very challenging to find a job. So I'm fully aware the position I'm at. Like I'm very lucky. So I don't want to brush people off like, yeah, you know, take the high road, be selective. If it's not 100% what you want, screw it. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, yes, you want to get your first experience. I understand the drive there, but you want to find something that actually going to help you build your career. The first step is very important, right? Because kind of like when you learn something new, you want to make sure you get a good foundation. And if your first job is working for a not so good company, then you start to build bad habit. Then you think like, oh, this is how we do it, I guess. Then when you move to a different company, then you carry those over. It's not good because habit is hard to change. So I rather you take a little bit longer and do it the right way.
And I think this go back to what you were talking about critical thinking. Yes. And yes, and I do feel the same. I know that when we finish, we need a job and we want to just grab whatever it comes. But then people come to you and they start telling you the experiences that they have in their job. And it's like, oh, should be my job like this? Is no, you shouldn't. This is not real. Like there are jobs that are good for you, and this has to do a lot of with for me in my case is how your values align with the company, and did you ask the questions to see if their values align with you and if they care about you in a holistic way again. Yes, because if and I have this at the beginning when I was interviewing, if the companies are not asking me about my past experience that is 10 years, that means that you really don't care about me and you just care a little bit of what I have that is new, that is US. Then I don't want to work for a company like that. But again, it comes from the space that I have the time and the resources to find the right fit for me, and not everybody has that. So it's to find that right balance. So if you could give between 3 to 5 tips to have a successful first job interview, what would you tell people?
Yeah, I mean, first one, I would like to say, you got it. You got this. If you get that far, you are doing something right. So, and then when I talk to other, people in the interview process, they get very nervous. They get like just so worried that they're gonna screw up. Change that mindset. If you're able to get to interview or even your second, you know what? You're already kind of there because you have what the employer is looking for. So all you now is to really calm down and answer the question and again, right? Talk about how your skills can help the company. That, like, from that point forward, that's all you need to focus on. And then, to be more specific, make sure you are consistent. So what I mean by that is, if your portfolio talk about, oh, let's say you want to highlight your research skill, make sure you talk about that in the interview too. But it's a little, tips and trick is that on your portfolio, you don't have to talk about everything because no one can read the entire thing. I always tell people I probably spend about 5 minutes reading someone's portfolio because I don't have the time. When we have a posting out, we, get 20, 30 applicants. And if you spend 5 minutes each, that's almost like 150 minutes. And guess what? I have to work. Like, my job is not to read resume the entire day. So that is the reality. And, when people say like, oh, I never hear back. Unfortunately, if you didn't hear back, sometimes we might not even get to it just because with so many resumes, right? So I'm sorry, but that is just the reality. So when you're in the interview, going back a little bit, sorry. So when a portfolio, make sure you only highlight what I call moment, right? Because there's a lot of information. So I only probably can remember like 2 or 3 key things per person. So if let's say, you talk about your research skill, like I said, okay, you said like, oh, I have conduct a user plan, recruit people, blah, 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 blah. But you didn't talk about how you recruit it, what do you actually do, then you make sure you want to talk about it during the interview. So now you cover all ground. Because otherwise, I would wonder like, oh, Julieth said she did research, but where's her research plan? Like, how did she do it? So it's one of those things that you kind of have to plan in that sense. Like, oh, okay, I didn't talk about it, but it's intentional because I want to save it during interview. So that's like a little tips I like to share. And in interview, obviously, you're going to get a lot of questions thrown at you. And then on top of it, it's a stressful situation. So sometimes you might not have an answer right away. You know what? And that's okay. I'd rather you tell me like, you know what? I don't have an answer to that question right now. Can I get back to you after? You know what? I like that more than you just start rambling, because some people would just like, okay, I have to look like I know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to say words. That doesn't mean anything. It's just fluff, right? It's just like coming at you at like 1,000 miles per hour, but you're like, what are you talking about? That to me is no good. I'd rather you like, you know what? Let's talk about this after. That's okay. I appreciate it. At least you're honest, right? Then it happened at work too. Sometimes your brain just stop, and it happened to the best of us. So it's okay if you don't have an answer. Just tell me. So be honest. And finally, that kind of go back to reading the job description when you prepare for the interview, is that understanding the space your employer is in. So some company, is, for example, is business to business. So the way they do, I guess, the software or like how they talk to the customer is different because they're talking business to business. But if your employer is like a business to consumer, which 90% sometimes that's the case, then okay, we understand the customer, the demographic, who will they talk to, who use their product, and then you can craft your answer based on the information that you know, right? So that way, as opposed to like, oh, I lost my train of thought, but like, what I'm trying to say is you want to show people what you know and don't tell me, right? Because if you answer like, if I ask you a question, then you start bringing back my customer in your answer, then I'm like, okay, you done your research. You really care. As opposed to like, I care about this job. Okay, great. You just telling me things. It doesn't mean anything. So yeah, those are some of the tips that I would say.
Yeah, no, love it. And I think for all of this, we are going back to communication and how you work with a team. Like every time that you're answering a question, you're not just answering the question, but you're showing your style of communication and how you're going to integrate on the team. So I think, and when you said like, oh, I don't know the answer. I mean, that happened many times when we are going, showing stuff to tech or to a stakeholder. It's like, oh, I would love to know the answers, but it's impossible for me. So it's for us to take a moment and say, yes, I don't know at the moment. I will get back to you. So it's okay if we don't know. And I think, again, we are not machines to know all the answers. We have some questions, but I think I will, for whoever is asking, I will put them at the end. Okay, so now I got the job. Yes. And I think a lot of people is like, what do I do as a designer? Like, what is my day to day? So what do we expect for these first 3 months as a UX designer in my new job?
Yeah. Honestly, the first 3 months, when we have new designer join us, I told them I don't expect a lot. Here's the reason why. First, this is a brand new company, so you have to learn about the company, right? Once you understand a company, then you have to learn about the product. Sometimes it can be easy, sometimes it can be complicated, but it's somewhere in between. You still need time. And then you're going to have to learn about your team. You're going to get to know them, how the people work, blah, 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 blah. And then maybe you have to learn a new software, right? Because, we all use different like project management tools. Some places use Asana, some places use Jira. Who cares? It's just one of the things you might have to learn or you might not. So considering all this thing, that at least take 1.5 months to get it right. So now half the time is already gone. So the other half, you're not going to work on like, oh yeah, this is a project that like the most important thing. Sometimes it happens. It shouldn't by design. So if that's the case, usually we're trying to ease our designer into it to give them something easy so they can learn about this, right? Telling you the process is great, but the only way to relearn is to do it. So that's why we give you like small tasks so that you can start working with people, build that relationship, get a feel of the company, right? To do a dry run. So, but in these 3 months, you should really try to understand the business, what this company is doing. What are we trying to do? What is our business goal? What is our strategic? You want to understand those high level things. The reason why is that once you start working on real project, you're gonna have to think like that, because if you're just thinking in isolation, like, oh yeah, this is UI is great, this layout is awesome, people can use it. You know what? That's awesome, but is people our customer actually going to use this and upgrade or even be to convert to a paid customer? If they are not, then this solution sucks. That's just a reality, right? Because I always tell people, if you want to make the most usable things on earth, great, do it on your own time. Or you're working for a nonprofit. If you're working for any organization that is a business that is trying to make money, you have to meet that goal, because guess what? Your salary come from profit. If they don't make profit, you don't get a salary. And guess what? You out of a job. That's just a reality. It's that simple.
I lost my mouse. Okay. Okay, so I finished. Now I feel like I know a little more of my team, and I know a little more about the company. The 3 months are done. Like now, what should I be doing in this first year? Like I want to succeed, and I want to be do my best. What recommendations should I do?
It depends on the company. So if the company is small, you have the opportunity to really try everything. And if that's the case, I would strongly encourage that, because when you just start in this career, you don't know what you don't know. So you want to do as much as you can so that you can find your strength or your weakness, right? It's not good and bad. It's just knowing what you're good at. And you should always play your strength because that's how you become valuable. And if there's weakness, that's okay. Work on it. So get better. So that's why if you have that opportunity to allow you to try different thing or maybe something outside UX, do it. It doesn't hurt. And if you in a bigger organization, if that is not the case, that's okay. Then maybe you can do like take some online courses, because a lot of company allow you, they give you like an education budget. So use that and learn something different, right? Yes, it may not be like a UX course, but like I want to understand how to talk to the PM. I want to get a seat in the table. Well, take some business class. I'm sure your employer would be very excited that you understand, you know what, that's how you become better. So that's what I would do in that first year, because there's a lot of online course you can take. And that also helps you build your career too, because like I said earlier, you want to find out your strength and what your weakness. And sometimes you'd be shocked that your weakness is actually what you like to do. And your strength is actually what you don't want to do. And I always tell people is that it's really important when you start your career is to find out what you don't want to do. Because now you're not wasting your time to do things that you have no interest, right? You're not going to lose your passion. You always want to find things that you care, that you want to do, and get better. So you can remove the things you don't want to do, then you focus on the things that you're interested. So that's what I would say the first year in the career.
Yes, and I think for me, this is like usually like a tough one to choose. Yes, it's like, oh, I had the chance in my job to be able to work in so many different things, and I love that. And I think it's for people to find what they like. Yes, uh, and you can just do that by trying things. So if you don't know, just ask for it and maybe give it a try and see what happens. Okay. So I feel like those were your like 3 to 5 tips to succeed in the career, correct? Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we can jump into the different questions, and uh, let me see. And maybe we can go back a little bit. And I know that we've been talking more about interviewing, but how I demonstrate uh, my outside skills or transferable skills into my portfolio, because and that's something that you mentioned too, that bring those into the interview and throw little nuggets to people that I couldn't show in the portfolio. So how do I bring that experience into my portfolio?
It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I think the best way is to and explain it in a story, because as we heard online, right? Like designer is a storyteller, and there's no difference when you're in a job interview. And the best way for someone or you stand out is you have a memorable story. So as opposed thinking like I want to bring my retail skill to tell you that I'm good with people. If you're doing it that way, it's really shoehorn. It just doesn't flow right. So what I would say is that if you're working in a project, I'm just going back to the teamwork, right? You talk to a team member and that team member is being difficult and it's just saying like, no, I'm not doing it because you're wrong. How can you convince that team member to look from your perspective? Not necessarily like the outcome. Yeah, you guys are singing Kumbaya, holding hands and start dancing. I'm not saying that, but at least you're able to show that person the other side, and then you're able to make a compromise. And that's what it's really about. It's a negotiation, right? You're not going to get 100% what you want. I'm not going to get 100% what I want. So we're going to be somewhere in the middle. So we all get something. So everybody wins. So you can talk about in your portfolio like, okay, so I start using data to show my team member why this is a good solution. I walk through my design decision, how I get to this step. So this is not like retail, conflict, uh, resolving the conflict, but it's similar, right? Because you're trying to talk to people. You're using facts, which a designer should do, right? You're removing subjective feeling. You're just trying to be objective about it. So I think that's the best way to do it, as opposed to really trying grab thing like, okay, I help a customer like this, or like, oh, like that doesn't really work. I have seen people try it. Like I get what they're trying to do, but it just never really land in a good way.
Makes sense, totally. And I think maybe this goes back to, I hope that I'm pronouncing their name properly. Um, so Mark inside, there are like any suggestions on how to add a personal touch in your portfolio?
um, it be who you are. I know it's like not really an answer. I have seen portfolio, what I say, trying too hard, where animation everywhere. Like I feel like I'm gonna have a seizure, and I just turn it off. Like I can't handle. Like I literally get a headache. I have things where like the things are zooming in, and I'm like, why are you doing this? I just want to read. What the focus on your portfolio is, like I said, tell me who you are, what you do, and showcase your skill. Personal touch is best under about me, right? So if I have time, if I want to learn more about you, you allow me to learn. You allow me, you give me the flexibility to learn about you, not like force me to learn about you. That's the difference.
Yeah, and I feel it goes back. Is this going to be useful for you when you have all these flashy things? Like your end user, that in this case will be you, is like we already know that is not working. So yeah, that's a great one. Let me see. I want to try to kind of put the questions together. We have one from Lincoln. So, do most people start as a UX generalist? And how do they find their niche? And this is from Eva. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touch on it, right? If you have the opportunity to try everything, that's how you know. For me personally, I didn't figure out what I really want to do until I start doing those things. It's sometimes some of the answer is very easy and obvious, and that's why we miss them because they're so obvious.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so here, do you? Okay, this is from Katrina. Do you have any books, video courses, any recommendations? And I think this is such a broad question, but yeah, any recommendations?
I do. I don't remember like all off the top of my head. Books. There's two books I would recommend. One is Essentialism. That's the one I just finished. Great book. I like books that are not like an academic textbook because no one like to read those. They are boring. They are long, and then after you read it, like I need a dictionary to figure it out. What's the point, right? So that book is good because it helped you, um, not just like career. It helped you as a person, like help you to remove distraction, how to make good decision. So I'm not gonna ruin the book for you, Eva, because I obviously am not as smart as the author. So go read that book. The other one that I read, but it's recommended from Roger, CEO, later, is actionable. What's it? It's the book is on gamification, but the title totally slipped my mind. I can share that with you after, but like I think you know what it bothers me, so I'm gonna do something weird. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go on
Google
Amazon
it.
right now.
Google
Yeah, uh,
it.
it's so funny. Oh, you know what? Actually, I have it. It's called
Oh,
actionable gamification. There we go.
perfect.
So that one is understanding motivation. Why people do this, and what are the technique that you can nudge people or to motivate people to do the things that you want. So this is very powerful, but it can get dark really quick if you don't have good intention.
Ooh, that's a spicy one there. Makes sense. Okay. Some another one for from Marquisai. What are the best practices to grow as a UX designer?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Like, what do you mean by best practices?
Do we is like maybe what are the things that we need to do to be better designers? Is there something like this?
Okay, let's roll with that. If not, then ask again. um, so part of it, it just experience, right? So again, I'm not going to talk about that too much because you can't fast forward time. So let's skip that. But some of the stuff we touch on, right? Take courses, like understand, go beyond what your job description. I think is the key because if you are just doing what you ask, yes, you get better in that box and you can be very good at it, but you're lacking the vision. You're not getting other like lateral skill is a thing that actually help you make a leap, not like a tiny climb, right? Because I would always say a lot of designers don't understand business. So if you have any opportunity to learn about business or any opportunity in the company allow you to get more hands-on in the business side of things, just go do it. That's you'll make leap and bound as a designer.
And I think this is just throw us to the next question. And from Kate is, should our UX designer also consider business goals? And yes, and I mean you just said it, but
Yeah.
how do we get into that? Do we just go and ask people? Like, how is that interaction?
So just to clarify, consider business goal would be like your design should satisfy that business goal. That's kind of how I would answer that question. But that's only one side of the coin. But there's also user goal, right? That's why it's tricky because those two sometimes are not one to one, and rarely they are one to one. If all things align, and great, easy project, you smooth sailing. But if there's differences, then it's really up to you to understand like what is the trade-off, right? And you're gonna have to negotiate. You're gonna have to talk to the PM or the senior leadership team or the VP of product, whoever that may be a decision maker, saying like, okay, I understand the business goals, I get it, but in order to do this, there's something. It could be A, we can't even do it. It's not ready, or B, questionable. Like it feels like this is kind of short term and not a long term kind of thing. So you're gonna have to start having that dialogue before you put anything down on paper. Because once you put it on paper, you kind of get that train rolling. And if that's the case, people start working on it. They start to spend time and they get emotionally attached. And by the time you're like, guess what? We're not doing this anymore. Let's pivot. Usually that won't turn out well. So that's why you want to make sure you get as much alignment as you can before you start. And I will say sometimes revenue will trump user. That's just a reality. And you're going to have to be very honest with yourself. And me personally, I'll let people know, guess what? I'm going to do it. I understand why we're doing it because we have to match our revenue goal, but also let you know I'm not happy about it because that is not the right way, right? So the follow-up question is like, okay, when are we going to take a look at this again? After we meet the revenue goal, is there things that I can go back and fix it so to make it better? There's no real solid strategic plan to work on this kind of situation. It's case by case and easier if you have a good relationship with the management team so that they know where you're coming from. It's again, right? It's understanding a trade-off. I understand where you're coming from. You understand where I'm coming from, and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I love this because I feel like a lot of the trade-off, it comes based on the relationship that you have with your team and the stakeholders. I mean, it happened today to me at work, and it's like, can I say this? Meanwhile, it's happening. We do this integration, and what will happen after? Because I think for us is to bring in, okay, this is what maybe the users are going to us, and they want this, so we can have whatever you want, but this is the issue that we may have in the future. So it's bringing up yes, the realness of the users at the end of the day. I think, okay. Okay. So let me bring it in. So this is it. How do you grow from a junior designer to a lead designer? Like,
Before I answer that, I would say why, right? Is there a reason why you want to be a lead? Because it sounds good on paper, like most things. And it's one of those things you kind of have to figure it out. Do you actually want to do it? So let's remove that out of this, right? Let's assume that you know what lead design and then you want to do it. So I'm going to give you that answer. Part of it just time, right? Like, I would say at best, 3 to 4 years is a realistic timeline because when you say junior, I don't know how junior you are. Are you like completely from a different thing and then you really start from scratch? Then it might take longer. And also, it depends on the organization too. If you're a team of one, you can be a lead, but you're leading yourself. So it doesn't matter in that sense. I'm just speaking from that's my opinion. I never care about title. I don't. I care about what I do. I care about, am I growing as a designer? Am I learning new skills? So I understand, title does matter if you happen to, move on to different opportunity that give you some, indication like what you can do. So I get that part. But I wouldn't approach it like, oh, these are the things I must do to be a lead. I would rather you go at like, hey, how do you become a better designer? Set some goal, right? 1 year out, when you look back, what did I do better? 2 years from now, what did I do better? I would say that is the right way to do it. And if you do those things, you can be more than a lead designer, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And I think this goes back as uh, doesn't mean because you are not a lead, you are not leading things in the organization or in your company. So for me, it's like, okay, if you can take some initiatives already to show, do I want to do this or it will work for me? Because this could change again between organizations. Being a lead is one thing to a different organization. So it's finding that, and it's about the money, it's about, like you were saying, about the title, and those are completely two different things. And how you can grow on the field maybe will be a better solution at the end of the day, and you can get more from it than just throwing yourself to being a lead.
You're
uh,
not boxing yourself in, right? Because if you have that mindset, you're assuming it's a linear path, a path. So you're climbing that ladder. But if you just want to be a well-rounded, good designer, now you open things up. You can be anything you want. So I'm always in giving yourself more opportunity, more wiggle room than just like, this is the path, right? You always want option.
yeah, I love it. Maybe we have, let's see, one or two more. What about this one? Okay, so this is okay. I love when people have a lot of questions. So, what is the most challenging thing about being a UX designer?
Many things. It also depends on the organization, right? If you're working in an agency, it would be your client, because you are, at the end of the day, you're almost like a service, because people paying you to solve a problem, and people who are paying you may not understand design. So they might ask for things that they think is normal, but with your expertise, it's like, this doesn't make sense. So you're going to have to convince someone paying you money to tell them in a nice way, like, you know what, that's not possible. So that is a challenging part, being a UX designer in an agency setting. But internally, you don't have that issue. But again, you're going to come into alignment into what project we should do, how we should do it. So challenge being a designer is more about communication, getting alignment, and making a trade-off that is best for everything. And it's hard, right? Like, that's the tricky part. And that's why sometimes experience matter, because the more you do, you understand, like, yep, in this situation, this is going to happen. This is why I'm doing it. If you haven't experienced it before, well, guess what? You're going to have to screw it up. Then you learn it. So that's why, yes, experience is not everything, but it is something.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. I mean, that's what happened. More that you practice, more that uh, you do it, you know how to handle these situations. Um, Maybe the last one, and we can close up with this, is I don't know. Okay, they were asking. Okay, what about this one? What are the best practices to work with the development team? How to make a strong relationship with them?
Yeah, I mean, good question, but it's impossible to actually give you a good answer in a minute, because I don't know how your current workflow is, right? Um, the best thing is to loop them in as early as possible. When the project start, everyone who's going to work on it should be in that meeting, so they get context, they get the why. And throughout the when you start moving down the process, you're going to want to have constant small meet frequently, and don't wait till the end, have like a grand finale. Guess what? This is a final product. It go either way. One is exactly what they think it is, then great, you move along. Second is like, what the hell is this? That's not what I thought it's gonna be. And usually it's the latter. And when that happens, that's where disaster come in, and you're gonna have, like, all the conflict that we all heard about online. So to give you a really high level answer without understanding your actual team is to loop them in as early as possible and talk often.
And I feel like a lot of the questions go back to what kind of relationships are you building with the team and how much do you know them? Because I think this is going to make whatever is happening easier if you have a space when you can come and talk and have an honest communication. Um, oh my, I have so much fun. Thank you really for meeting me today and sharing about how to be prepared for the job and what to expect in the job and how to succeed and learn new things.
No, thanks for having me. It's fun, and hopefully it's helpful to the people who join this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And for all of you that haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss people like Billy. I have guests every single week, and what we want to do with UX and Tame is empower everybody out there to learn more about UX design. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.